Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Hey, Summit, good afternoon. How are you?
Good. How are you, Justin?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm very well. Thank you for agreeing to do this webinar. It's really good to be with you on it today. So, Summit, let's get started. We're exactly 1 o'clock. Everybody's in the meeting room that's here, so let's not delay. Let's get going. Brilliant. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us today. We are absolutely delighted to have you with us. We're going to be here for 1 hour exactly. We will be finished by 2 p.m, we promise. And we're going to talk today about leading remote teams and effective remote working in our workplaces, because we all know how important that is, not only during normal circumstances, but particularly right now with the unprecedented challenges we face. So we're going to get started straight off. This is a picture of me where wishing I was self-isolated. This is where I would love to self-isolate, but I'm not, as you can imagine, I'm not doing that right now. It's also representative of where we are. So everybody on this webinar that's joined us is looking for personal development, personal growth. And believe it or not, there are less than 20% of the population that do that, that take that approach. And whilst this may be a complimentary webinar, you've invested the most important component of your life in today, and that's your time. It's the one thing we can never get back. So Summit and I are determined to make sure we make the very best use of your time today. And as you are all in either leadership or high performance roles, we're going to make sure that you get both principles, structure and application from today's session. So we hope that it's going to be useful for you. Please feel free to take notes. In terms of structure, if you would like to communicate with us, feel free to use the chat box on Zoom and just enter any comments, questions in that chat box, and we will look to address those in the final Q&A session. Please stay on mute until the Q&A. I think I have muted you all, but we'll look at whether or not we bring anybody in for conversation at the end, depending on whether or not that's the right thing for you and for the forum that we're in today. Now, our webcams, I don't know if everybody's got theirs on, but feel free to put your webcams on. At the end, we're going to take a Zoom picture of everybody that's on the call. So we'll address you at about 15 minutes before the end. We'll ask you to put your webcams on and we'll take a group picture that we can then put on LinkedIn, and we'll do a call out to everybody that's on this webcam, on the webinar today. So thank you everybody for joining us. Last 10 minutes will be Q&A, and as I said, we'll finish absolutely at 2 p.m, no later. So this is what we're going to cover today. We're going to work through a series of quick introductions and fundamentals about remote leadership and about remote working. And then I'm going to share with you 3 key principles about how you can lead remote teams effectively. And Summit is going to talk to you about models, structure, and application. I'm then going to do the same around effective remote working principles. And again, Summit is then going to talk you through specific models and structure that you can use to make sure that you implement that as effectively as possible in your own organizations. So that's the agenda that we'll follow today. Now, the other thing I'd like to understand is, what is the one thing that you are thinking about right now that you need in terms of support? So I'd love you to, throughout this webinar, if you know it now, great. As we go through it, you may be prompted and reminded of certain things that are lacking or missing for you right now. And I'd love you to put in the chat box, my one thing is, and then put what's the one thing that will help you either as a leader or as a high performer. And just the process of focusing in on that one thing will really help you get clarity. It will be great for us because we will take that insight and we'll share it back through to you after the webinar, but it will also help you to think about how you address that particular need that you have as well. So if you can think about that throughout the course of the webinar, my one thing is, and just drop it into the chat box, and we'll be sharing those with everybody post-webinar as well. So thank you for that. So first of all, I'd like to introduce Summit Malhotra. Many of you on the call will know Summit, but some of you may not. Summit is a really interesting guy. I've known Summit for a while. We met at a business networking event, and I really love Summit's outlook on life and work and his career. He has this principle about exploring and evolving. So he's naturally curious. He's really thinking about how he evolves, grows, and continually develops himself. Sumit has extensive experience, 15 years business experience, 5 of those years at director level and above, and specializes in the financial investments industries. Worked for some incredible organizations, Credit Suisse, S&P Dow Jones Indices, Legal and General Investment Management, and the CBE Group. And Sumit's worked in a number of functions in all of those organizations. He's experienced in sales, IT roles, quant investment strategies. I'm going to ask Sumit to explain that one because I'm still not quite sure what it is. Fund management and business development. And as well as having practical business experience, Sumit has extensive academic experience. He has a Bachelor of Engineering in Electronic Engineering and Computer Science, and he has a Master of Science in Quantitative Trading and Mathematical Finance, and Sumit is an MBA. So Sumit, I'm going to ask you to tell me what that previous quant investment strategy was. Sumit, are you there? Sorry guys, we are having a few problems. Sumit, are you there? I need to hold on a sec. Hold on a sec. Sorry everybody, unmute him. Let me find him. Hold on a sec. Sumit, I'm sorry Sumit, it's my bad. Here we go.
Excellent.
Sumit, now Sumit, over to you. Sorry, it wasn't technical error, that was user error. My user error, sorry about that.
It's okay, it happens. Quick question also, are you sharing your presentation? Because I can't actually see the presentation. Can you share your screen as well?
Sorry, Sumit. Thank you for, I was sharing it. It isn't being shared now. Let me just put it up. Hold on a sec.
Let's do that.
How's that?
As you can see, we are all adapting to working remotely.
It's seamless, this, isn't it? Absolutely seamless.
Right. Thanks a lot for that introduction, Justin. Really kind words. Appreciate that. In terms of, back to the question of what I will actually also need to request remote control from you.
Please do, Sumit.
Right. Yeah, we are. I think we're on. Yeah. So quant investment strategies are basically systematic strategies that are done through programming code. The benefit of these are they're based on actual a lot of research that goes into what the markets have done in the past years in different scenarios as well.
Okay.
And also they're based on heavy backtesting. They do remove the human emotional element from investments, and they tend to generate better returns than most active strategies. For example, the S&P 500 itself, you would see that it's very hard for the investment managers to actually beat that index over the years. Warren Buffett himself also admitted that recently. So that's about quantitative strategies, really.
Thank you, Sumit. Thank you.
Moving on from that, there's a slight lag here.
Yes.
Yeah. Now we're good. So Justin, yourself, you have 25 years of sales and business experience. And I know Justin doesn't look that old to have that much experience, but he does. And 15 years of that 25 years have been in leadership roles. 9 years have been director level or above. And it's mainly been focused on the dental, medical, IT, and industrial markets. The experience has been focused in. Justin has been running his coaching and consulting business for the last 3 years successfully, and he specializes in business and sales leadership and high performance growth for both individuals and for firms. So this is an interesting slide. Justin, why don't you tell us a bit more about this slide?
Yeah, let's do it. Yes, this is a personal slide, Summit, just to let people know, we are all leaders, high performers, but we're also human beings first, right? And this is my kind of human side. So I live with my wife, my 2 grown-up children, and my dog George in Cambridgeshire. Most of my client work tends to be in the UK, and with a particular focus in the London area or kind of Cambridge and East Midlands. And one of my principles, I talked about yours, Summit, being around explore and evolve, which I really like. I've got this quote that I keep in mind, and that's that we all have the power to do anything we choose as long as we have the passion, the drive, the focus, and the support. And that kind of stays in my mind. I think today, hopefully what people will find from this webinar is that this gives them some of the focus and the support they may need for their leadership roles or their effective high-performing roles. So thank you for the question, Summit. I appreciate it. Now, many years ago, Barack Obama said, "For the world has changed and we must change with it." How right he was. And one would say maybe he had foreseen the future, but the one thing that is constant is change, and we must embrace it. Now, if many of you will be in leadership positions, or you'll be a high performer, and you will know about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Now, I won't go through every layer of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but as a fundamental reminder right now, when Maslow pulled this set of needs, this hierarchy of needs together, I don't know if you knew, but he actually had these 5 levels, and then he met a guy called Viktor Frankl. And Viktor Frankl wrote the book Man's Search for Meaning. And Maslow added a layer to his hierarchy of needs after meeting Viktor Frankl. And that was that it wasn't about self-actualization as the highest level of needs. It was about self-transcendence of our needs. And right now, probably the people who are doing that are key workers, NHS workers, people who are trying to keep the world safe. But as leaders of organizations, we need to recognize that our teams, many of our teams, will be finding the current situation very difficult. And you might have someone in your organization that had high self-esteem, had high growth aspirations, but actually in the current climate needs to really double down on their own safety and security. They could have things going on at home, they could have things happening personally and professionally in their lives. And as leaders, this is about recognizing that change in approach. Yes, it's important that we continue the business running and we continue to drive for results, but it's also important that we understand where our people are and we meet them where they are right now. Now, in terms of communication with our people, the other thing to remember, this is an obvious thing to point out, but I think it's really important to do so. Right now, not communicating with your teams is not an option, and calling them is better than just emailing them. And that might be a really obvious thing to think about, but we're so, especially when we're working from home, we're so conditioned to jump on email and start firing out messages and communication via email. We can sometimes forget how important it is just to pick up the phone. And even if you're picking up the phone or having group calls, actually video is significantly better than just calling people. So having the platforms that are available to us, whether it's Zoom, Skype, Microsoft Teams, GoToMeeting, whatever your platform is, getting people on a short, quick, face-to-face video call is significantly better than just having a call. And of course, when everything frees up and normal service resumes, being face-to-face is the optimal vehicle and the optimal way for us to meet and develop that strength of relationships with our teams. But we have this option to take a blended approach, and knowing there's a hierarchy and one actually is more beneficial and valuable than the other is really important for us to understand. So it's difficult to over-communicate right now. It's not impossible, but it's difficult to over-communicate. People cannot read your minds. They don't know what's going on inside your head. And so the only way to do that is to have frequent communications. We're going to talk about structures and models to do that during the course of the call today. But your goal, remember your goal, is to offer support to your teams, create trust, create clarity, but you must avoid micromanagement. This isn't the time to be all over your people. That's not going to inspire or motivate them. Actually, offering support as your primary means of communication and intention is really important. So I heard this recently on a call, on a webinar I was on. I thought, this is really interesting. I'm going to model this out. We have let's look forward. You know, in a year from now, we'll be in a good place. In 3 years from now, we'll be looking back at the current situation and thinking, wow, wasn't that a moment in time? And, you know, we've got 3 choices. Right now, if we freeze, draw right back and embrace the fear and the uncertainty, then chances are, personally, professionally, and from a business perspective, we're going to go into decline. If we think we can carry on as normal, we continue in a state of denial, we're going to get sporadic results, some ups, some downs, and we may get to, you know, 3 years from now, roughly where we are today. But if we see this current situation, our current way of working, as an opportunity to change, and we think beyond just this few months that we're going to be in isolation, and we start to think about this as a blended approach going forward, that there are real opportunities for us working this way, leading our teams, increasing and maximizing productivity and impact, then we are going to be able to hit a growth trajectory coming out of this situation that is unparalleled. But you have to make a choice. We all have to make this choice. It won't happen by default. So know that you have one of 3 options right now, and they will impact where you will get to in the next 1 to 3 years' time. So let's go on to our first principle. Our first principle is around leading remote teams, and this is about remembering your responsibility. Your first responsibility is that your team need your support right now, more than ever. And the best way to provide that support is to spend some quality time getting to understand what support they need. Simply asking that question. How are you? What do you need? How can I help? And as leaders, we very often go straight into, are we all still clear? Are we going to be able to keep the business running? Are we going to be able to keep delivering results? Remember, you will get there, but right now we have to go back to a fundamental of asking our teams what support they need primarily and as a first port of call. Now, principle number 2 is really important. This is, once you have an understanding of what your team's support needs are, now it's about understanding how to agree expectations and performance objectives. And the term is agree, not dictate. And it can be really simple to say to people, right, I need you to do this, 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 and this right now, because that'll keep them on track. Actually, getting people's agreement on what expectations and performance objectives are is really critical, especially when you are not in the same working environment with them. We need their engagement and commitment to it. And think about 3 things: tasks that need completing, the timing of those tasks, and how together you will agree that you will track performance and the meeting of those tasks. And interestingly, for those of you that know the research, the number 1 engagement indicator for employees in organizations is, I am clear of what is expected of me. Now more than ever, people need to be clear of what's expected of them. The third principle is creating a rhythm of communication, coaching, and review. So you can do this a number of ways, but not people knowing how often it's going to happen, what medium it's going to take, and what they can expect from it is really important. You can do it through one-to-ones, you can do it as teams, and Summit will talk about this more in the next session, or you can do it as project groups, but trying to keep the right people communicating on a regular rhythm, and then using as a leader your skills to coach. That means questioning, listening, and understanding, and then reviewing how they are performing so that you can help people keep on track. So Summit, I'm going to ask you to take us through the next section, if that's okay.
Sure. So what is the support to your team action plan? What tangible actions can we actually take to make sure that we are supporting our team members to give their best in terms of productivity. The first step itself is actually awareness. And by this, what I mean is, as a manager, you need to be aware of what the personal goals are for your team members to be able to actually align those personal goals with company goals. How can you actually do this? Is by looking at also their strengths and their weaknesses as well, in addition to their personal goals, to understand what is the strength of a particular team member, and to leverage that. As managers, too many times we focus on what a person is not doing right. We are almost like trained as human beings to look at what's not right rather than what's correct. So it's very important to be aware of the strengths and play to them for the team members as well. Okay. The next one is desire. And by this, what we mean is the desire to create that desire within the team member to deliver the best quality work that they can do, so that they're proud of it as well. How does that come about? It comes about through creating the trust. So the team member needs to trust you, needs to be loyal to you, and vice versa as well. It's a two-way street. Motivation. Now, research suggests, and also empirically from my experiences, I've noticed that motivation is mostly intrinsic. You can't make a person do something if they're not interested to do it, apart from just kind of like, you know, cracking the whip and things like that, but you will not get the best quality work. You'll get a very substandard kind of work. So motivation is intrinsic. However, through trust and other factors, we can create the right kind of stimulus for that intrinsic motivation to be generated. The next is empowering the people. So a lot of managers I've seen, and some of the clients, they go to the team members and say, you're not delivering quality work, and I want you to take more initiative. However, when they're actually taking initiative, are you actually allowing them to go through with the decision? Be clear in terms of how much decision-making power you're giving to them. Be clear on that empowerment. In terms of the next stage is knowledge. And what you need to make sure is that your team member understands why they're doing the process, not just how to do the process, why they're doing it. By this, they'll not only deliver good quality work, they'll actually be able to improve the process if needed, and make it probably less costly and things like that as well. Make sure they have the right training and the right tools. So all these three components, they really lead to the enablement zone. So now your employee and your team member is really enabled to perform the task. The next step is to actually action. Action means your team members are actually doing the tasks. Again, going back to what Justin said earlier, make sure the objective of the task is clear. They know what the deliverables are. What is the time frame for that deliverable? Have regular check-ins. Again, do not micromanage. Have regular check-ins, maybe a weekly catch-up with them one-to-one, to understand where different tasks are in terms of progress, if they're facing any hurdles, what's stopping them from delivering their best performance. And the next and final one is review and reinforcement. Always praise in public. This creates the natural sense of trust. If there is feedback, discuss that in private, but feedback doesn't just mean going into a meeting room and telling your employees, look, this is all that you're doing wrong, you need to improve here, here, here. No, have that meaningful conversation with them. Have an adult-to-adult conversation. Do not treat them like kids. And then tweak your strategy as and when needed along with your employee on the next steps. So building trust, this is an important element, and I think it's more important than ever before, as when people are working remotely, most managers feel that the productivity is low. To keep that productivity going, you need that intrinsic motivation to be maximized. How do you build that trust? The first step is empathy. Practice active listening. Don't listen to respond, but listen to actually understand what they mean. A good way of actually demonstrating active listening is to also summarize after the discussion what you understand from the other person's perspective. Logic is really important. Once you have actually listened actively, you can then discuss based on logic and reasoning and bring the discussion more to an objective space rather than a bias or subjective space. And instead of having a debate, you can actively have a solution-focused discussion here. If your logic is not good, I can't really help you with that. But what I can tell you is make sure that if your logic is good, you're communicating it in the right way. You're articulating it well. And the third step is being authentic. Be yourself, be genuine. As a human species, and we are trained to sniff out any time someone is not being genuine with us. So do not say things you do not mean. Always say things you mean and follow up and show what you mean through your actions. Communication channels is so important during remote work, especially since we can't just turn our chairs around and have a face-to-face conversation. So we need to decide actually on two channels here. And one is the synchronous channel. This is meaning when you want to have communication in real time. And the other one is the asynchronous channel, which is more towards your email and project management tools, and people can carry out different parts of this conversation as and when they see fit. It is really important to do this because for purposes of clarity and for purposes of not micromanaging, you have to choose these channels really, really wisely. So when do you use a video call or an audio call? That's typically should be used for maybe a one-to-one meeting, a more in-depth session. And email and project management tools can just be used for day-to-day updates. You can use a chat for a quick conversation, confirmation on an action, perhaps. In terms of communication channels, it is also the right time to think about what are the formal communication channels and what I would refer to as an informal chat group. Because think about how we work in offices naturally. We're not always talking about work, work, work. Every 1 hour, there's going to be a 5-minute small chit chat here and there, which actually offers a really good break to refresh our minds and then focus for the next 1 hour back on our work. So make sure you have like an informal chat group where people can have those conversations. And this is quite important to keep the team rapport going as well. Have a bonding session maybe on Friday afternoons, maybe play like some kind of a virtual game, have some icebreakers. In terms of, I think a lot of people who follow the Agile framework are probably familiar with this, have a morning stand-up in terms of a team meeting to just kind of go across the room, so to speak, to see which team members are focusing on what action items. Again, this feeds back into the clarity section that we've been talking about. And in the evening, before leaving work, if everyone can give an update on where they stand with different projects and what hurdles they faced, just a quick update, that would be quite welcome at this point as well. What are the common pitfalls that team leads fall into really? One is a lot of team leads and managers think that empathy sessions, it's gone, one slide to your head. Justin, can you?
Oh, what? Sorry.
Oh, that's fine. Okay. Right. Okay. So empathy session takes too much time, and there is some truth in this. Yes, in the beginning. Yes. I think you're. Yeah. Perfect. So they do take too much time only for the first time. The idea is the first time takes. You build that trust, you start to build that trust. The second time is probably half the time it took for the first. So maybe you have like a 1 hour session to begin with. The next time you just follow up with like a 15-minute session or a 20-minute session. And once you build that trust over 2 or 3 sessions, then you will start to resonate with your employees really, really quickly. Then that trust really starts to give a lot of results. Then you really have the employees' loyalty and motivation, and everything is going like clockwork at that point. Another misconception is rather than training, I should do it myself. Again, it's the same concept from the empathy session, is people believe that because the first time of training someone is taking so long, they'd rather do it themselves. But you got to recognize, you got to be patient. And you got to recognize that once you've trained someone for the foreseeable future, they will be carrying out that task. And that task will drop off your list, and you can focus on other items that require your actual attention. And the third one is empower. So a lot of leaders say that they empower their team, but it is so important every so often to check back in and say, actually, am I empowering them? Or when they actually make a decision, am I too harsh? Do I back them when they make a mistake? Do they feel my full support or not? and have that conversation directly with your team members and see what their feedback is, rather than trying to assess that yourself. Because we live in communication land where we often assume what the other person is thinking, or we place more importance on our own biases. But the truth is, it's all about perception. What your employee perceives is their version of the truth, really, and that's what really matters. So be mindful of that. With that, Justin, I'll. Oh, actually, one more slide is Richard Branson correctly says so. If you look after your staff, they will look after your customers, and this is so true for all teams. Is you have to look after your team members to make sure that they're delivering the right quality product for you as well. Justin, I'll hand it back to you on principles for effective remote working.
Thank you, Sumit. So we've talked about leadership and what it takes to effectively lead remote teams. There were a couple of things in there that sparked in my mind, Sumit. The Friday afternoon ice cream. Today is a Friday, really, for most of us, because tomorrow's a bank holiday. My daughter's working from home. She works in London normally, and she is on a house party call at the moment. Her and her work friends, colleagues are having a house party this afternoon. I thought it was quite an interesting thing. And then later on, they're going to be having a house party with virtual drinks. So all sorts of things are possible. And sometimes we just got to embrace the technology and think about things differently. So remote leadership, now we're talking about effective remote working. Now this may be you as an individual and how you make sure you get the best from yourself. It may be principles that you want to share with your team. So I hope these three things, we wanted to try and keep it succinct and tight on the three most impactful principles. So principle number one when you're working from home is the morning routine. Now this is very often missed when we talk about productivity, because we go straight into to-do lists and prioritization, which will be rule number two. But principle number one is really important. Get a morning routine in place so that you're rising at a certain time. You know what the first thing you're going to do is. You don't have to think about it. It becomes part of your habitual rhythm. And the way I think about this, and have done for years now, is I want to do three things as part of my morning routine. I want to generate energy. I want to get myself into the most positive mindset possible. And then I want to be motivated to start my day. And you can start each day at your best if you get a morning routine in place. And the one I use, so I ask myself three questions first thing in the morning, every single morning. And any of you who follow my social channels may know what these three questions are, so I'll go through them very quickly. The first one is, what am I most grateful for in my life right now? What am I most grateful for? It grounds me in gratitude. The second is, what am I, or what could I be most appreciative of right now, especially in the current climate? Because we should be appreciative of the absolute fundamentals of our lives that enable us to be here and do what we need to do any given point in time. And then the third question I ask is, what am I most excited about? What's the big challenge I'm facing right now? And it generates positivity and energy. Now, I ask those three questions, then I get into some form of exercise. Summit's going to talk about daily routine in a second, but that's mine. And what it does is it creates a frame in the back of my mind, and I guess the backdrop for my life, that is inherently positive and high energy. And if you haven't got a morning routine in place, I promise you, doing something as simple as this can really change the way you approach every day and how you feel about yourself and your productivity. Principle number two. Now, if anybody on the call or on this webinar has read Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, you will remember this model. If you haven't, let me explain it. This is the urgent important matrix. And as you can see, urgency goes from one side to the other. I think it's that way as I'm doing it. Urgency goes from one side to the other, and importance dissects and crosses and goes up. So you end up with 4 quadrants. And the 4 quadrants are not urgent, not important. And you think, why on earth would I be doing things that weren't important or urgent? Social media, emails that don't need a response, that's all the stuff that's not urgent or important. Then we've got urgent but not important. So it might be urgent to someone, it might be urgent to us, important, not important to us, and urgent to somebody else. But it's urgent but not important. These are things that are constantly tripping us up during a day. Then we have the urgent and important tasks. And finally, we have those tasks that are not urgent, but are really important, the big strategic tasks we need to do. And what Stephen Covey's model teaches us is that we should prioritize our time and reorientate ourselves to spend a disproportionate amount of time in the top right-hand quadrant. It's not urgent yet, but it's critically important to me. And that is where the magic happens. That's where productivity really kicks in. And what I do with my tasks, I go through a simple review. So I get everything out. Right, I've got all of my tasks out, then I review them. And I'm assessing them and understanding, okay, what needs to be done when? And then I prioritize. Once I understand them, I prioritize them. And only then do I take action on them. Because very often we get stuck into a to-do list before we've really assessed what's most important. And if you can begin and end every day by taking your list of strategic tasks, reviewing, assessing, and prioritizing them, then working out how you're going to act on them, that makes a huge difference to your productivity. So once you've done that, the third principle is about scheduling your day. Know when you'll start. Know, as importantly, when you'll finish, and commit to a finish time. Because when you commit to a finish time, you create urgency. You create this stop at the end of your day that forces you to be more productive and to finish tasks that you know need finishing. If you allow your days to blend into your evenings, it's not good for your work-life integration. It's also not good for your productivity because you'll start to burn your own time. So diarize your tasks, diarize one-to-ones, diarize check-ins, and as importantly, create space in your day for breaks and downtime because that will keep you highly productive. Summit, over to you.
Okay, so in terms of the daily routine, what is the action plan we can have? What are the different parts of the puzzle that we need to fit in here? Dress up. So change into actual work clothes. Do not make the mistake of actually just turning up at your designated work desk within your home in your pajamas, because your brain will not get the right kind of message. You will not be primed to give your best. Workspace. Have a designated place for your workspace. Again, your brain needs to know which areas are meant for relaxing, which areas are meant for you to be productive at work. Time, as Justin said, so important to have the right start time and keep it regular. Show up on the same time every day, end at the same time every day. If you know that you have to finish the day by 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, whatever it is, you will make sure that during the day, you are much more focused and productive in actually delivering tasks. Do not fall into the trap that I have the whole evening that I can catch up on tasks, because that will ruin your work-life balance or work-life integration. Exercise. Do yoga, do cardio, do strength. Have different days for different exercise routines. All of them have their own benefits. It's important not just only to you to stay in shape, but it's also important for your mental health as well. Next one is limit news. So a lot of us possibly can get really panicky, anxious by looking at the news all day long. And we can just kind of like not even realize that the TV is on and the news is just going on loop, really. You don't need to listen to the news more than once or twice a day. It is very important that we stay informed. I completely agree with that. But just doing that on loop is just going to create a feeling of negativity. Gratitude. So important in life to have this attitude of gratitude, really, to create that positive mental space. Because when we are positive, when things are coming from a more cheerful space rather than the fear space, we are automatically more productive in life. We're automatically thinking in terms, we're doing our best work, basically, whenever we are positive. Be kind. A lot of team members right now might be feeling anxious. Treat them with a human aspect. You don't know what's going on in their personal life. A lot of parents are finding it really hard to cope with, homeschooling and work. It's not easy to homeschool. I think all of us know that. So be kind to you is that. Also, one added benefit of being kind to other people is whatever if we are trying to do a kind act towards someone else, we feel that happiness in ourselves first. That's how human nature works. If you are trying to do something mean towards something, you will get that bitter feeling generated in yourself first. So to maintain that positive sphere for yourself, respect yourself, be kind to others. And the final bit of the puzzle is nutrition. Make sure you're having fresh food. I know it's not easy right now. Supermarket delivery slots are almost a lottery ticket right now, but find ways to make your nutrition optimum at this point. So if you can fit all these pieces of the puzzle right now, I think you will have a good, sane mindset, which is very important to keep during this lockdown period. Productivity. What's our action plan for productivity? The one rule I've been following for the last 10 years, a decade now, is the 1-3-5 method. What is the 1-3-5 method? It is, you have one big task schedule for the day, 3 medium-sized tasks, and 5 small tasks. You have to get through these through the day. I usually tend to tackle the biggest task first because you have the most energy at that point. You have the most momentum. So do that the first thing in the morning, then move on to your medium tasks. Or if you want to get momentum, you can get in 2 or 3 small tasks in there as well. But it's so important to have, again, a clear list of what you want to do and what you need to do. And it's best actually to prioritize this the night before. Emailing. In this data world, I don't know about you, but I was in jobs where I used to more than 1,000 emails used to hit my work inbox on a daily basis. So it's so important to have the right filtration processes, which emails actually you care about, which are just random confirmations that you don't really care about on a normal basis. So filter your emails using email rules, organize them into folders. Have a 2-minute rule. If you see an email which can be answered in 2 minutes, do it there and then. Respond and not react. So Justin and I were discussing basically, it is all productivity manuals talk about not responding continuously to emails because that's going to break your concentration. However, some of us do live in this world where people are expecting instantaneous response, especially if you're in a production support environment and things like that. But just be careful of how you're responding and don't react instantaneously. Think if this email really needs to be responded right now or can it wait? Next thing, again, with the whole digital data world is collect, organize, prioritize, and do. This is so important to follow these 4 steps. Have a mechanism to collect all the information that's been thrown at you during the day rather than thinking that if you don't look at this issue right now, you will forget about it. That is the number one thing that really plagues all of us, is not having a space to park what is thrown at us. At the end of the day, organize all of that information for the next day for you and prioritize it for the next day on how you're going to attack all of that information you've got and how you're going to draw productivity from that. And doing all of these 3 steps is really going to help you actually maximize your productivity, and 90% of your time should be focused on execution of things. To do this, you can use your Notes app, to-do list, and calendar. These 3 things are absolutely mandatory to be able to do this 4-step process. Back to you, Justin, to summarize the principles.
Thank you, Sumit. Excellent application there. I hope you're all agreed there's some really useful content here around not only leading remote teams, but then making sure you're as effective as possible, because as leaders, we can't expect our teams to be really productive and effective if we're not doing the same. So we have to authentically practice what we preach. If we're telling people or advising or coaching our teams, we can only get their buy-in to the extent we ourselves buy in to that, those principles ourselves. So leading remote teams, we talk about 3 things. Remembering that right now your team are going to need support first. And the best way to understand that is to ask them, and think that every single one of your team is going to be in a slightly different place depending on their circumstances and what's going on for them in their world. So understanding what they need doesn't mean you can't challenge them. It doesn't mean you can't be a leader to them and really help them unlock the highest levels of performance, but the starting point is support. Principle number 2 then, agree expectations and performance objectives. So you will have had, I hope, a number of performance objectives in place with your teams before lockdown. Now, it's about getting back to those objectives, revisiting them, understanding what your team members are thinking about it, and agreeing how they change or how they shift or how timing moves. What tasks can be done remotely now or need some form of different approach because you can't get people together, but you can get them onto different calls, and there are different ways to track and monitor those tasks. Then look at timing, make sure that people are agreeable about the timing and they hold themselves accountable, and how you're going to track them. Third principle was around this rhythm of communication and taking a coaching approach right now. And if you are familiar with coaching as a leadership style, excellent. If you're not, there's lots of resources out there. And I have a Focus on Growth YouTube channel that there are lots of insights videos. If you wanted to subscribe to that, it's one option for you. But take a coaching approach, review with your teams on a regular basis, and make sure you're putting in place the right communication mediums. And then effective remote working. We talked about 3 principles and application of the principles. A morning routine that helps you generate energy, positivity, motivation at the start of your day. Reviewing, assessing, prioritizing your tasks, and making sure that you start and finish every day with a robust process to get everything together and know what your action plan is. And then the third principle, scheduling that action plan. Once you've reviewed and assessed and prioritized, make sure you schedule a day, get the right tasks in the diary, and then just stick to your schedule. It's really quite straightforward, but you'd be surprised how often this is really difficult for people when they move to a remote working environment. So what can you do next? Hopefully today's session has already started to get you thinking, and the objective today is to stimulate your thinking, perhaps even bring you back to some principles you already know but maybe aren't practicing. So sometimes it's just about helping us to re-clarify and get focused on what we need to do instead of what we have been doing. If you want to work with either Summit or me or us together, we're collaborating on a number of projects at the moment, then we can do either one-to-one work, we can do teamwork, but you can initially book a growth strategy session with us. Now, if you're a leader and you want to work one-to-one, one of the caveats that both Summit and I have is that we're really looking to work with leaders that are themselves looking to inspire, they're looking for growth themselves, personal growth, they're looking to take action, and they're looking to make an impact. And that may seem like an obvious caveat, but common sense isn't always common practice, and we're really keen to work with people that are looking to take their performance to that next level. The other thing we've both been involved in is running virtual workshops for organizations. And there are a number of areas, 2 of them we've covered today, inspiring remote leaders, high performance remote working, and the third area is this transformation to virtual selling. A lot of sales teams right now, their customers are still in the market, still working, whether that's remotely or still in, if they're key workers actually in situ. But this transformation to virtual selling might sound like an obvious transition, but it's not so obvious to a lot of sales organizations. And you can contact us on either of our email addresses, so feel free to reach out to us directly if you'd like to know more about working with us. But you don't just have to take our word for it. I work with a lot of organizations, as does Summit, and we get some incredible feedback from the work we do. When you mentor, coach, and train organizations, the difference it can make to productivity and performance is quite outstanding. And we work with a lot of different brands, a lot of large organizations who really get benefit from some of this work that is really impactful, particularly in the current climate. So we are into our last 10 minutes. Before we go to questions, I'd love you all just to go to your webcams. I'll pop it up here so you can see it. So if everybody has a webcam and can put it on, look at that. Wow, look at that. Wow.
Looking nice.
Much. What a beautiful group of people. You are, honestly. So we'll get as many webcams up as we can. Let's have a look. How are we doing? Anybody who's not on, please feel free to do so. And we're just going to take a quick snapshot of that. I'm going to work out how to find my snipping tool. And there it is. And I'm just going to take a quick, hold on. So I'd like you all to smile, please. Look at that. Oh, okay, there's one. Look at that. Can you all see that?
Yeah, we can.
That's what you look like. What do you think? Oh, yeah,
Everyone
beautiful.
looks fantastic, but you've got
Beautiful.
everyone on mute, so they can't really comment.
Yeah, beautiful. Okay, so let's have a look at our chat. So what have we got? Some good comments on the daily routine puzzle piece is really useful. Great graphic. Thank you, Suman. 135 method is too good. Oh, wow, good. Too good, Summit. You're too good. Thank you, Deepak. And I must admit, I use the 133, the 135. I revise it actually, Summit. I call it 133 because I can't always get 5 small tasks done. So I go 133, but I use it the same principle. So that's really good. Summit, I've got a question for you, if you don't mind.
Go for it.
So you talked about leading remote teams. What would you say is the most important quality as a leader when you're working remote teams? If I had to kind of nail you down to one, what would it be?
I think it would be to have that genuine connection with your team members everywhere, because you're not, look, most people working remotely, for some reason they think that because my boss is not here, he doesn't see what I'm doing. But the truth is, through emails and everything, you can definitely judge the output. So you need to have that trust, and they need to be aware as well that the output is being measured. If I can just add one more thing to that, I know you asked me just for one thing, but the other thing is being so aware of the strengths of your team members. I cannot emphasize this enough, really. So many leaders are just focused on what the negatives are and what the shortcomings are. And it's actually a true life story where one of my employees, he was so phenomenally good at churning out information and data. However, there were some quality issues and testing issues were the problem, and he was not getting promoted for 4 years by the past manager because of those problems. And I said to the senior manager that, dude, like, he is doing awesome work. We just need to take away this testing from him. Get that testing done by another team member who enjoys testing, who's good at it. And that really paid dividends. And now that particular team member, he's actually leading remote teams himself.
That's a great example, Summit, a really great example. And sometimes we have to know what our team's strengths or limitations are, because if you keep pushing someone on their limitations, it's only going to demotivate them. Yeah, you're absolutely. Yeah. Summit, we've got a question from Roberta Zanardi. Roberta, hi. Hi, Roberta. Thanks for your question. So Roberta's one thing: how can I learn the right way to train and coach my team online? I'm used to doing it in person, but I've noticed it's different.
It is definitely, there's a difference to it. But what I feel is when working remotely, a lot of those principles are the same. You have to use the same principles. It's just the channels will change. Yeah. Having one-to-one video conferences, again, video call is so useful in being able to have that honest conversation with them. And I would say, let them talk more. Ask them how is their day going, how is their productivity, how are they feeling about the change in work. They will start to give out information which is really useful and key for you to address. That's the approach I would take.
Thank you, Summit. Yeah, and I would say, Roberta, the other thing to bear in mind is if you're finding it more difficult, they are definitely finding it more difficult, okay? And if you can take your authenticity to that conversation, be honest with them and say, actually, I'm finding this more difficult than I was before. We're going to put these measures in place, but I also need your help. What else can we do? Because one of the things that we forget as leaders is that it's not just our responsibility to figure this stuff out, right? There are not only just the resources, but your teams, people in your team will have some suggestions. And while you're running through things, they'll be thinking, well, why aren't we doing this? And why aren't we doing that? They will only come up with it if they sense the vulnerability and openness of the leader to accept those suggestions. And I'm sure you're doing this already, Roberta, but I'd say one of the things I learned the hard way in my leadership roles was to move from this position of complete authority to go, hold on a minute, I don't have all the answers. I'm going to have to enroll my team because I can't figure this out. No one person on the planet has that much intelligence, whether it be intellect or emotional intelligence, IQ or EI. And actually spending the time just with a bit of vulnerability, Summit said, really listen to them. He's absolutely bang on. They will help you figure this out. They'll only help you figure it out if they think you want them to help.
Does that help, Roberta?
Yes.
I've actually unmuted you.
Ah, well done.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, it has been very useful. The matter was that sometimes it's also, sorry for my English, I'm Italian, and for the tone of the voice. Sometimes when we make training or I attend the trainings, the speaker keeps the same tone of voice, you know, the same one.
Yes.
When you are in person, you can interact with eyes and also, you know, with body and capture the attention of the audience. But when you are without video, often we make trainings without video. So it's more difficult, you know, this is the big obstacle I found.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to find more resources, new resources to communicate in a different way, in a different channel.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. That technology is like Zoom and other technologies. You can definitely make full use of that. And you've really touched on an important point, is that when we are speaking, there's so much like feedback you can get in person through body language, through expressions. And that is so important, which is why it's very important to choose the communication channels depending on the communication you need to have with your team.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Agreed. Thank you, Summit, and thank you for the question, Roberta. We have a couple of other things. We're at 4 minutes to. We will finish at 2 o'clock because that's my commitment to you. The first question is, will the presentation be shared? So Summit and I, we are recording this presentation. We'll make that accessible to you. I'll put it on a YouTube channel. I'll also put the PDF of this slide deck if you want to share it internally in your organizations. We'll let you do that. Obviously, it's our copyrighted material, but as long as it's just for internal use, that's okay. And if you would like us to go into any more detail in your organizations, feel free to reach out. There is one other question from Monsieur Ifyok Johnson. He said, my question is, what are the challenges of micromanaging in these times? 3 minutes, Summit. 3 minutes.
Do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, okay. So my view on this is that micromanaging in these times does a couple of things. One is it completely tunes out your organization. And the more you try and micromanage, the less motivated people will be. And they'll start to actually resent the work. And the way I see it is, once we get beyond this period of time, your ability to maintain that staff, those staff members, is probably going to be compromised. So the antidote is to trust them, is to get closer to them, is to ask them, what can you deliver right now? What objectives shall we agree together? And work out a rhythm of review for those objectives. Summit, what do you think?
I think that's spot on. Again, micromanaging, you do not want people to feel like you are kind of like babysitting them or like being big brother on them. Allow them to do their work. It will also disrupt their productivity patterns if they constantly feel that my managers keeps coming in and disrupting my workflow as well. So
I agree. I agree. Thank you, Summit. Listen, guys, we're at 1 minute to the hour. I hope it has been a really valuable webinar for you. Apologies for my technical incompetence right at the start, where I tripped myself up and you just saw me blithering on. But we will circulate the slide deck, so you will have them. Thank you all very much for making the effort to join us. We really appreciate it. Thank you for the questions. Have a wonderful long weekend if you've all got Easter breaks planned, and we'll be in touch with next steps. So thank you all very much. Summit, thank you. Thank you very much.
thanks a lot.
Take care, everybody.